The sound of tearing fabric cut through the emergency ward louder than the beeping monitors. Every conversation stopped, every breath froze. Nurse Island felt the cold rush of air against her back before the humiliation reached her heart. Hospital CEO Marcus Hale stood inches away from her, a strip of blue scrub clenched in his fist, his face twisted with anger meant to make an example of her. In that single moment, before anyone could speak, before security could rush in, before shame could fully settle on her shoulders, Marcus's eyes fell to her exposed back, and his world came to a dead, trembling halt. Just seconds earlier, the ward had been chaos. A multi-vehicle crash had flooded the hospital with critical patients, alarms screaming, stretchers racing down the halls. Island had been moving non-stop for 12 hours, hands steady despite exhaustion, voice calm despite the blood and fear around her. She had ignored protocol once, just once, by overriding a delay in imaging to rush a patient into surgery. It saved a life, but it also triggered a system alert that went straight to the top floor. Marcus Hale had stormed in like a thunderclap. He was known for his spotless suits, his ruthless efficiency, and his zero-tolerance management style. To him, rules were sacred, and disobedience, no matter the intention, was a threat to order. He didn't ask questions. He didn't listen to explanations. He saw Island standing by a patient's bed and decided she would be his lesson. "You think you can do whatever you want?" he barked, loud enough for the entire ward to hear. Island tried to explain, tried to point to the stabilizing vitals on the monitor, but Marcus was already reaching for her shoulder. In one sharp motion, he yanked, tearing her scrub down the back seam. Gasps echoed. Someone shouted his name, but it was too late. What Marcus saw wasn't bare skin alone. Etched across Island's back, stretching from shoulder blade to shoulder blade, was a tattoo he knew better than his own reflection. A military insignia, a unit crest, below it, a line of names. And beneath those names, a date burned into his memory. His hand went numb, his breath caught painfully in his chest. Because that tattoo belonged to the medics who had pulled him from a burning convoy 15 years ago. The ones who had carried him through gunfire. The ones who had saved his life when he was certain he would die. And the date beneath it was the day his entire platoon had been declared lost, except for him. The room blurred as memories slammed into him without mercy. Sand, smoke, screams. A young combat medic with blood on her hands and fire in her eyes, refusing to let him go even as explosions rocked the ground. He had never seen her face clearly. Just her back as she shielded him, that same tattoo visible through torn gear as she dragged him to safety. "Island," he whispered, though he didn't know how he knew her name. She slowly turned to face him, pulling the torn scrub together with shaking fingers. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady, eyes that had seen far worse than public humiliation. "You humiliated me," she said quietly. "In front of my patients. My team." The ward was silent now, heavy with disbelief. Marcus dropped the torn fabric as if it burned him. For the first time in his career, words abandoned him. Later, in his office, the silence was even louder. Island stood near the door, posture straight, dignity intact despite everything. Marcus sat behind his desk, his head bowed, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. "I didn't know," he said finally, his voice breaking. "I never imagined." "You never asked," Island replied. "You saw a rule broken and decided that was all I was." She told him her story then. How she had joined the military at 18. How she had served as a combat medic for 6 years. How she had lost friends whose names now lived on her skin. How she left the battlefield carrying guilt, trauma, and a promise to keep saving lives, no matter where she was. Nursing wasn't a step down for her. It was a continuation of who she had always been. Marcus listened, truly listened, perhaps for the first time in years. He told her his own story too, how survival had turned into obsession, how control became his shield against fear, how he built walls instead of trust. He admitted that he ruled the hospital like a battlefield, forgetting that healing required compassion as much as discipline. The investigation that followed was swift. Witnesses spoke. Security footage confirmed everything. Marcus publicly apologized, not just to Island, but to the entire staff. He took full responsibility for his actions, stepping down temporarily while the board reviewed his conduct. Island was offered time off, compensation, and a private apology. She refused the hush money. "I don't want silence," she said. "I want change." And change came. Marcus returned months later, not as the untouchable tyrant, but as a humbled leader. New policies emphasized respect, communication, and clinical judgment alongside protocol. Eileen was promoted to head nurse in the emergency department, her voice finally given the weight it deserved. She trained young nurses the way she once trained medics, firm, fearless, and compassionate. On the anniversary of the date inked on her back, Marcus attended a quiet memorial she held each year. No press, no speeches, just names spoken aloud, remembered with honor. He stood beside her, not as a CEO, but as a man forever grateful to someone he had once failed to recognize. The hospital changed, but so did Marcus. He learned that authority without empathy was just another form of violence, and that true leadership began with listening. Eileen learned that her scars, visible and invisible, were not marks of shame, but proof of resilience. And every time she tied on her scrubs, she stood a little taller, knowing that her story had not only saved lives, but transformed hearts. Because sometimes, the strongest message isn't spoken at all, it's carried quietly on your back, waiting for the world to finally see it.